I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mrs. Norian, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Certainly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine Law Statement. All requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the record and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darian, would you read the mission statement?
The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Here.
Mrs. Downey will not be here. Mrs. Genchi.
Here.
Mrs. Moran will not be here. Mrs. Norian.
Here.
Mr. Nutlin.
Here.
Mrs. Walker will not be joining us. Mr. Darian.
Here.
Mrs. Nichols.
Here. At this time, we'll open to the public for agenda items only. Not seeing any, we will move to our auditor's report so he can get out of here since he's been here since a while with us in finance.
Thank you for having me here tonight to present the audit. The board members should receive there we go. Thank you. Each board member should receive two reports. The clear cover report is the annual comprehensive financial report, and the smaller report is the auditor's management report. The annual comprehensive financial report contains all the financial statements and our opinions on the financial statement and our opinions on your grant compliance. Our major responsibility after we complete the audit is to give an opinion on whether your financial statements are fairly stated, whether they're prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and whether there were any scope limitations in performing the audit. Our auditor's opinion on the financial statements is unmodified. Unmodified means a clean opinion, means you prepared the financial statements in accordance with GAAP, you had no scope limitations, and they're fairly stated. We also have to give an opinion on your compliance with major federal and state grant programs. Our opinion there is also unmodified, clean, meaning you complied in all material respects with those grant compliance requirements. Unmodified opinions in a financial statement audit and a compliance audit is an absolute must. Any modification means there's issues and exceptions to those financial statements or those grant compliance. One of the most important schedules in the report is the Exhibit C1, starts on 71, ends on page 76, gives a line-by-line accounting of your general fund budget, gives you all your revenue accounts, all your expenditure accounts, gives you what your original budget was, what modifications you made to that, gives you the final budget, and then what you actually did in revenues, actually did in expenses. And at the end on page 76 is the summary of fund balance. And the summary, it's the bigger book, the summary of fund balance is important to you as board members because as in the process of preparing the 26-27 budget, you want to know how much money do we have, and what are those funds available to be used for. So I'm going to go through the summary of fund balance on page 76 and go through the lines. Capital reserve, $1,781,799 represents the funds that the board has set aside for future capital projects in the long-range facility plan. This $1,781,799 has not been earmarked for any specific projects. So going forward, if you have a project that's in the long-range facility plan and you don't have money in the budget to do that, you can draw off these funds to pay for that project. You also had capital reserve of $500,000 designated for subsequent years' expenditures, meaning you appropriated $500,000 in the 25-26 budget for a specific project. If you don't use the funds on that project, whatever's remaining will go back to the $1,781,799. In total, you ended the year at $2,281,799 of capital reserve. It's up about $101,000 from the year before. Next two items, maintenance reserve, $493,157, represents the maintenance reserve on hand at June 30, 25 that you have not earmarked for any maintenance project. You also had maintenance reserve designated for subsequent expenditures of $150,000. That's the amount of maintenance reserve you appropriated in the 25-26 budget. And if you don't use the monies for that purpose, it'll go back into the maintenance reserve, $493. Capital reserve can only be used for capital projects, can't be used for operating expenses. Maintenance reserve can only be used for maintenance costs of school facilities. You can't use maintenance for capital, you can't use capital for maintenance, and you can't use either one for operating costs. Capital is different from maintenance, is that capital adds value and life to your assets, where maintenance reserves keep the assets in their current working condition, repairs and things of that nature. The maintenance reserve total of $642,157 for the two numbers is the maximum you're allowed to have at the end of the year. So that's good. You got that 100% funded. You also had emergency reserve of $175,425. This is a very restrictive reserve. It can be used to fund a security project at the time you adopt the budget. So if you use those funds when you adopt the budget, you can use them for security projects. Or you can use them during the year to fund unbudgeted health benefit costs that exceed 4%. To use them for any other purpose requires the Commissioner of Education's approval. It's a reserve of last resort. Very hard to get to use it for other than those two things, but a good reserve to have. The maximum you're allowed to have in there is $250. You're $175,000 you have. Unemployment reserve, $25,717, represents the monies that the board has put aside to fund unemployment claims. The district is self-insured for unemployment versus you're on what's called the reimbursement method. You pay for every claim that's filed. The claims come in, you look at them. If you dispute it, you file an appeal. If you agree with it, you pay the claim. There's also monies that come out of the employee's pay that's put in a different account, and those monies are also available to pay the claims. That money actually gets spent first, these get spent last. Being self-insured for unemployment claims is more cost-effective than being on what's the contribution method, is where the money that comes out of the employee's pay and the amount that you're supposed to contribute goes directly to the state, and they hold on to the money and they manage it, I guess, for you. This way is much more cost-effective. Excess surplus, you'll see $200,000, and then excess surplus designated for subsequent years' expenditures of $200,000. Excess surplus is the result of funds that are on hand that are over the 2% you're allowed to have an unassigned fund balance. In New Jersey, there is a statute that says you can only have 2% of your budget in unassigned fund balance. That's the true surplus. Those are the monies available to fund future expenses as the board sees fit. When we close the books, we do the transfers into the capital reserve, maintenance reserve, emergency reserve, book all the encumbrances. Anything over 2% goes into the excess surplus reserve. These funds must be used in the 26-27 budget as a revenue source, and they represent the amount you're over 2% at June 3rd through 25. So the next budget you prepare, 26, 27, you'll see 200,000 of fund balance as a revenue source in that budget. It's the minimum amount of fund balance you must appropriate. You'll also see excess surplus designated for substitute expenditures of 200,000. That represents the excess surplus from June 30th of 24 that you're using in the 25-26 budget. Those funds are financing expenditures in 25-26. They're no longer available to fund future expenses. On July 1, they basically lose their distinction. Next to item year-end encumbrances, 15,884. Assigned fund balance year-end encumbrances, 35,576, represents open purchase orders at the end of the year where you have committed monies and assigned monies to contracts that have not been completed and purchases for goods and services that you've not received. The money's earmarked. When contracts get completed and those goods and services get rendered, these open purchase orders get liquidated and the money is spent. These monies are no longer available to fund future expenses. And at this point of the year, these monies are gone. They have already been spent. That leaves you with unassigned fund balance 558,821, represents the maximum you're allowed to maintain under the statute on June 3rd through 25, represents 2% of your budget of about 315,000, plus an add-on for unbudgeted extraordinary aid of 235, and about a little less than $10,000 of unbudgeted non-public school transportation aid. It's the maximum you're allowed to have. It represents about 3.6%. You cannot dip into the 2%, the 315. You can use the adjustment, the 245, during this school year if something comes up that's unbudgeted and there's no money in the budget, there's no extra revenue, you can appropriate that money by board resolution into the 25-26 budget. Overall, on the budgetary basis, you had $4,136,379. I'm going to say your fund balance is very stable. It's very comparable to last year. Capital reserve went up 100,000. Unassigned went down 63,000. 2% of fund balance is not a lot of fund balance. You have a budget of $15.8 million in the 24-25 year, and your unassigned fund balance, the monies that you can use to fund the expenses that are not capital or maintenance, is only $558,000. It is not a big number. It is, unfortunately, under the statute, the max you're allowed to have. So, but you're stable. You got the same amount of excess surplus, so you start the budget for 26, 27 with the same amount of surplus you had in 25, 26. If there's no questions, I'll go to the management report. Page 12, last page. We had one general finding. We had no findings related to material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Those would be considered severe findings. We just had one general finding under financial planning, accounting, and reporting, and it relates to a withdrawal of capital reserve that was put into the 24-25 budget that was not approved by the board. The board approved a resolution to appropriate $52,000. However, $248,000 was appropriated to the budget, and the money actually wasn't needed. The extra of $195, it went back to capital reserve, but only the board by resolution can appropriate capital reserve, maintenance reserve, emergency reserve during the year. So next time we must, the board has to approve all appropriations of fund balance. The report overall is really an excellent report. One general finding, unmodified opinions, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. fund balance that's stable. So I think it's a good report. I think administration and the board had a good year. It's a good report.
Any questions for Mr. Bliss?
What are ways that we can boost or, pad that a little bit more?
The only real mechanism is to not budget for extraordinary aid. There's 2 aids, if you don't budget for, get added to that number. In the 24-25 budget, you budgeted $100,000 of extraordinary aid. And you came up, you got 348, so the extra was basically 248, or 245 actually. If you didn't budget that extra 100, that number would be 100,000 higher. That 548 would be 100. That's really it. The state really has tied your hands. And you see and you read in the paper the financial difficulties that districts are having. There's just not enough cushion in the unassigned fund balance to cover any significant unbudgeted item that comes up. And with, specifically with districts, specifically with health benefits, which are going up, which in January 1 went up 28 to 32%. You're budgeting now in 26, 27 for a premium that's you don't know where it's gonna go up, which is gonna go up in January of 27. And if you budget 10% increase and it comes in at 30, you're behind the 8 ball.
Right.
That's a tough, and that 558,000 may not cover you. 30% increase on your health benefits is 700 and change, 700,000 and change. It's a big number. It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. And every district in New Jersey and every local government is struggling with this health benefit issue, putting tremendous pressure on the budgets. And what districts are going to do is say, use more surplus, use more revenue, and that's unsustainable. Because if you can't regenerate what you use, then you don't stay stable, you diminish, and you get yourself in a position where there's no fund balance, there's no other revenues, and now the only place to go, because state aid is usually flat, is to go to the taxpayers. And you have caps with the taxes. And you don't want to get in the position where you can't raise the taxes to support the budget, so now you got to go cut programs. So it's a really delicate situation on how much surplus you use. The rule of thumb is only use what you could put back to keep yourself even. And if you cut programs or you say we're cutting expenses, you have to cut them. Because if the critical mistake people make is, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut that, and then, the budget gets passed, and then July 1st comes, and September 1st comes, and says, you know what, let's not cut that program. And now you put yourself in the bad spot. So it's the 26-27 budget is going to be difficult for all government entities, not only school districts, not only Oradell. And the health benefits is putting a tremendous amount of pressure on those budgets.
Your presentation is the one that we should have had a packed auditorium for, so that they can understand that when this rolls down, another year, and, unfortunately, if there's a chance that we have to make cuts, like, understand that you're letting us know ahead of time, and people don't understand how outrageous the healthcare system right now is.
Crazy.
It's unsustainable, not just for the state of New Jersey or a small town like Oradell. The country we can't
No,
afford this
it's
anymore.
unsustainable. You can't go up 30% every year. And if you use all the surplus and you lose all the revenue, that'll be gone, but the 30% is still there the next year. So it's tough. I don't envy you.
Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bliss.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, just a point of business. Our next meeting on March 11th is when Mr. Iapelli will present the budget to the board. It's the tentative first run of the budget. It has to be submitted to the county by March 19th, but I guess we found out that these state aid numbers are coming out late this year, and they're coming out either on March 10th, 11th, or 12th. So we are going to postpone our next meeting a week to March 18th because we have to then submit it by the 19th. And then we were going to push the 25th off, but I don't think we can because Mr. Iapelli, we have to go out to bid for the HVAC, and we have to approve it by when? The 25th? What would
Yes, we will
happen-
award it.
What happens if we didn't do it by then?
Well, then
If we pushed it off a week?
we're already, it's 24 weeks. It keeps getting longer and longer.
So it's not a legal, it's not a legal
Oh,
deadline?
it's not a
just
legal
that
thing,
we
it's
want to
just-
get it done.
Correct.
So probably we're going to have to meet 2 weeks in a row in March, but we'll see about the second one. But the next one, we're going to move to the 18th. And with that, I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Before I join the administration at the podium to facilitate tonight's presentation, I wanted to draw attention to a few things. First of all, in your folders today is one set of minutes that I forgot. Those are your PR committee minutes from the last meeting. Additionally, there were several additions added to tonight's agenda. And I wanted to point out one that wasn't added but is new for us, and that is our field trips. We've really been talking to our staff about exploring new field trips in the area, and our first graders this year will be going to the Tilke Arboretum, which is new for them. However, someplace that I have traveled numerous times on a field trip, and it's a really small arboretum that I think could be a great asset to us in a very close distance for first graders on a bus. Additionally, the years that we do not have a musical, it's become tradition for our 5th and 6th grade choruses to take part in American Young Voices, which is an opportunity for those students to travel to the Prudential Center and to perform with choruses all across New Jersey. They all learn the same songs, and they bring in professional musicians that evening, and they're on the floor of the Prudential Center, and all the schools are lining the seats, and there are banners, and there are shirts, and there are lights. You can buy tickets to attend. I will be there that night. It is a really cool event. And finally, something that as some of our more experienced board members have seen before, however, we have not done in a number of years, is Mr. Butcher will be recommending some of his instrumentalists to audition for the elementary honors band. So he will be traveling with them for that tryout in May. Finally, the one thing that was added that I emailed you about is on tonight's agenda is a little over $22,000 worth of donations from the Oradell PTA. Each year, the Oradell PTA offers mini grants to each grade level and different departments. We really encourage people not to buy the things that are in our general operating budget, but to say, what else can I buy to expand a student's experience at Oradell Public School? So you will see some assemblies there, the addition of some text, because there's always more books to be had, and a new grant this year that was provided to the Special Services Department that will put some fidgets and self-regulation and noise dampening headphones throughout the building so that if students are in a setting that they are finding overwhelming, there are always headphones in those spaces. So you can think of the auditorium during the assembly, the lunchroom, the gym, places like that. And with that, I will move over to the podium. Last week, the last board meeting, the administrative team and I presented on District Goal 1, which was our academic achievement goal, and we combined that with the DFG factor group presentation comparing our NJSLA scores with the other 21 districts in the Bergen County I factor group. Today we're going to talk a little bit about District Goal 2. However, what I've been trying to do is link to these presentations something that I think will expand your knowledge as a board and also the community's knowledge as well. So we are going to talk a little bit about Linkit, because if you've been here for a long time, you've heard us talk about Linkit a lot, but if you're newer, that's still a newer platform for you. So District Goal 2 spoke about improving district protocols and strengthening communication structures among students, families, staff, and the community. And that feels like a very fluff goal. And there's a reason for that. This goal is huge, and underneath it comes several different subfacets. We can talk about, so for example, being clearer and more consistent in behavioral expectations. That's a clearer expectation for our students. That's a clearer expectation for our staff. That's a clearer expectation for our families. So that hits all stakeholder groups. And sometimes that's what one of our actions will do. And sometimes it's a little bit more specific to a different stakeholder group. Part of what we did this year, after hearing a lot of feedback last spring that our code of conduct had some flaws. We really looked at it again and changed a couple things. One of the pieces that I always talk about that we changed had to do with using racist language and what level offense was that on our code of conduct, and is that a different level of offense at different ages. So you will see that that's changed. The consequence for that has changed in the code of conduct. Having a code of conduct in a student handbook is one thing, but reinforcing it and making it part of every day in the school community is more important. So we started this year by having the administration reach out to every single classroom and talk about the code of conduct and review the code of conduct and review it in a way that the language speaks to that group of students, whether that's a first grader, whether that's a fifth grader, because those are two very different conversations. I overall, and I'm not up here all day long, probably sometimes up here too much for them as it is, I do believe behavior has been better this year. From a quantitative data perspective, if I went and looked at the code of conduct tracker that we do keep for every infraction, it is lower than it has been before. And I would like to say that it's because the code of conduct is not just something on a piece of paper, it's something we're talking about all the time, and everyone has the same expectation for it. Moving on from there, one of the pieces that we talked about is no surprises with academic progress with families. We didn't want families to get an email that their child needed extra, was being invited to be part of an intervention cycle without a teacher having a conversation that we're seeing some struggles in the classroom. Because as much as we want families to see every opportunity that we can provide as, wow, this is great, there's also a piece that we want our families to be step in step with us on how their child is doing in school. So as you know, we did revise our report cards to ensure that now in first marking period, second marking period, and third marking period, there are specific expectations. We are not evaluating a student across the grade level standard for the end of the year. We're saying, where should you be at the end of marking period 1, marking period 2, marking period 3. We've also added mid-marking period progress reports in grades 5 and 6, and this feels very middle school, but it's a really good way to touch base mid-marking period. We did 6th grade last year. We added 5th grade this year, and we're in the conversation right now of, does that move down to 4th grade next year or not? We've also revised our protocols for notification of parents prior to intervention cycles beginning. So we do have a flow chart of who communicates that with parents. How does that happen? The teacher must notify the AP that it has happened. And one piece that I'm going to add on to this, and the admin team doesn't even know this yet, so they'll be happy to be here tonight, is I did speak to Linkit this morning, and we will be moving forward with opening the parent portal in Linkit this school year. Fun fact, it's free. I was almost shocked. Let's see if it's free next year too. And finally, we heard from our working parents about this need for more advance notice of school events. Planning is hard, and I know for each of you, keeping track of committee meetings and board meetings with the context of your job and your families is difficult. So the more information we can give to our families, the better. So all parent visitations for the year, whether it is the kindergarten, camp out, writing celebration, or fifth grade lead, or my very excited favorite new event of the year, the third grade recorder concert and instrumental petting zoo, which will be happening in June, have been shared with all parents and are also on our website calendar, which I'm really hoping to get our parents to a spot where they know that everything's there all the time. And while people who have used the app have realized that the app's a really easy way to keep track because it shows some things in a different way in terms of the whole week or the whole month, but really continuing to try to get people to use that as another site. I find it's easier to press on the button on the app to see calendar events than it is to log into the website from my phone. District goal 2, when we talked about parent communication, and this one school district piece can be difficult. When do you go to the assistant principal? When do you go to the principal? When do you go to the superintendent? And one of the things we've done this year, and you have seen this as a board already, is we've put together a communication process flow chart. I have not blasted that out to the whole community yet. It is on our website, and it will be in our student handbook next year, but it felt more like a start of the new year thing than a, hey, it's February, let me give you this new piece of information. So on the website for any topic, this is just the first 6-7 rows of, we'll tell you who to communicate with first. If you have a problem with the building after hours, you communicate first with someone different than if you have a problem with the building during the school day. Who do you contact if you have an instructional issue in the classroom? Code of conduct. And that can be found on the district website under our school, which is on the right-hand menu. And we have been working on this communication chart where the first step of it was to identify what are green communication events? What are the things that just happen every single day, every single year in a school district? And how are we going to tell parents how to know about that? Because I am sure, when I was first an assistant principal here, my first meeting, I was incredibly overwhelmed with talking to the PTA president at the time because there was so much. And how can we give parents right off the start information on how to stay informed? So those are those green communication events. However, what's underneath this that the PR committee and I have been working on are yellow events. What are those blips that are not typical and how will parents know about them? What are those red level events? Those events that are a possible threat to an individual, to a school, to a group of students. So this is something we have been continuing to work on, and every time I think we take a step forward, we find something else out that should be on it. I'm very grateful, as you know, to the board for supporting my attendance at the National School Small Superintendents PR Conference, and one of the pieces that comes with that workshop series is I can use them as a sounding board. And so this is something that I'm also talking to actual PR people about because this is outside my realm. It's one little part. In my small school superintendent, I talk about drain pipes one day, teaching reading the next day, and communication the third day. So this is still an ongoing something that we will be continuing to work on. Now this other piece, and at first I was like, does this go in here? And I do believe it does. Communication isn't just what we do with the people outside the walls of Oradell Public School. Communication is also, and structures and protocols are what we do inside the walls of Oradell Public School. And the reason this is so important is, I like to leave you with one piece of new information each time. There's a man named John Hattie, and John Hattie is an educational researcher, and John Hattie looked at, I think it's 350 meta-analysis of what impacts education. And he was looking for effect size. What variable impacts student achievement? and we've used this sometimes when we've talked to parents, anything over a 0.4, he found most things had a 0.4 effect. So things that were above that, he said, well, these have greater effect. Things that are lower have less effect. Reducing class size has an effect of 0.21. What has the greatest effect of anything at a 1.57? Consistency and collective teacher efficacy. The more consistent a school district is in terms of their practices, their priorities, their structures, their routines, the more positive the effect is on student achievement. And so we talk about that a lot in terms of what do we believe for children, and that's one way to look at collective teacher efficacy, but you can also look at it through the lens of how is every single person in that community moving forward? How is every single person in that community using the same resources? How is every single person in that community using the same structures in their classroom? And to do that, one of the things that the administration has been doing this year is documenting protocols. So what happens during a WIN cycle? What happens when we administer a benchmark assessment? So when we give the NJSLA, there's a handbook. What do you read? What do you do? We know there's a consistent implementation across the whole state. We now have that at Oradell Public School for Linkit. So that when Linkit is administered in in second grade or fourth grade, there's a set protocol to go through. So we know that everyone is having the same experience. That one on the right over there is a WIN period, because that's been a real focus for us this year. How is the WIN period structured, and what is our expectation for how that WIN period is structured? So that is part of the WIN guidance document that all staff have. So this is about internal communication and internal structures, which are just as important as what we communicate outward, because they all have at the core the same thing: student achievement. Now, I spoke a little bit about Linkit, and that's why I lumped the Linkit presentation to this. So the administration is going to give you an overview of the multiple uses of Linkit at Oradell Public School, because Linkit is one of those consistent structures. Even if you're not giving a benchmark assessment in grades K or 1, you're using it as a data warehouse.
Good evening. So what is Linkit? With multiple data points to support instructional decision-making in our district. It is a standard-aligned benchmark assessment platform that includes diagnostic, progress monitoring, and summative measures. Linkit assessments are aligned to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards and consistently measures end-of-year expectations across each assessment window with consistent rigor. So with Linkit, it has 3 different forms. It has Form A, Form B, and Form C, which we use in the fall, the winter, and the spring. So in the fall, it serves as a diagnostic assessment, and that's actually at the beginning of the school year, in September, of course. And that's going to be pretty much prior to any formal assessment, oral instruction that we actually provide all students, because it's going to measure end of the year standards before they are taught. So it provides all of us, as far as all members of OPS, a baseline that helps us monitor growth throughout the school year for all students in grades 2 through 6. Our Form B, which we will consider a formative assessment, because it's going to be assessment for learning during an instructional period, because of course we're going to utilize that and administer that assessment in January. It's going to function for progress monitoring. So it's going to measure growth after students have received instruction on grade level standards from September to January. And lastly, our spring assessment is going to be a summative assessment, which is going to be an assessment of all learning that has taken place from, of course, September until June. And what that will be is it's going to actually allow OPS to really look at how have our students done from September to June, and it would allow us the opportunity to determine how students have done and to make instructional steps for the upcoming school year. So, as I've mentioned before, OPS, we administer Linkit to all students in grades 2 through 6 in both ELA and mathematics 3 times per year. But there's one thing that I really want to stress and note is that Linkit uses different cut scores for each administration period. So a student's score represents the likelihood, and I want to really stress upon you, the likelihood of meeting end of year grade level expectations in ELA and math. So let me just give you an example. So when you may see or when we talk about a score that a student may actually receive, it's in a percentage. So say, for example, on whether it be Form A, Form B, or Form C, if a student scores 82%, that 82% is not like a regular score that one would actually receive on like a daily assessment or like a spelling test where they got 82% of whatever the problem's correct. That does not mean that. What that actually means is that it's an indication of 82% probability of meeting grade level expectations in ELA, if we're talking about ELA or mathematics, by the end of the school year. Does that make sense to everyone? I always like to check for understanding. That's the math teacher in me. So because expectations and cut year scores are always going to increase with each of the administrations, a student's numerical score may increase while their academic achievement level may shift. So this reflects the increasing rigor of each administration window and the higher performance because, of course, they're going to be learning more from Form A all the way to Form C. So that does not mean that a student is actually regressing in learning, okay? So when we're going to look at the different academic levels with Linkit, there's going to be 6 achievement levels. 5 are going to be the same as it relates to NJSLA, exceeding, meeting, approaching, partially meeting, and not meeting. However, there is one that's going to be unique to Linkit, and that's going to be the bubble. What the bubble means is that they're going to actually highlight the bottom 10% of all students within that meeting level. Why do they want to highlight that? That's for us, as well as other districts that are going to utilize Linkit, so that we can actually progress monitor or really work with those students so that they can ensure that those students are supported, whether it be during a win period or other supports within those districts or even our district, so that we can make sure that by the end of the school year, they're meeting end of the year standards. So link it as a benchmark assessment. When we are actually providing and administering it 3 times a year, how long does it really take for us to be able to receive those results? It's going to be available to all of us within district immediately. When we receive that data, it's not only just the percentage that I was just providing that to you with, but it's also organized in standard, skill, rigor, question type. So we're able to do a deep dive of that data so that we can organize it by individual students, by groups, by class, by data, by district, by school. If we were more than just a one school district, we're able to utilize that so that we can analyze the trends so that we can actually inform instruction, whether it be within our class, provide the different services for our student supports, as far as special education, TAG, our before and after school programs, in order for us to revise our curriculums in order to support our students and across the grade levels, PD, you name it, it's endless. So do we go to Linkit for a multitude of things? Absolutely. That's one of our things that we're always going to go to when we're talking with all of our parents in our parent meetings. So before I actually step away and Mr. Werner comes up to talk to us as a Linkit as a data warehouse, what is actually held in our warehouse? You see it, student attendance, our DIBELS data, our marking period grades, our benchmark results, our NJSLA results, as well as some of our district assessments. So for each of our students, we have a plethora of our analytics that you see right here. So when we are having our meetings, or even if we're having our data meetings with our teams, the first stop is this data warehouse. So we can go, we can pull the data right here, and then we can have our rich discussions. So Mr. Werner is going to talk to you about data and give you the snapshot here.
Good evening. I'm going to walk you through kind of like my day-to-day of using Linkit, because I use it pretty much every day of my life. So we use Linkit not only as a benchmark tool, which Ms. Cummings kind of highlighted with you about Form A, B, and C, but as you can see, there's a lot of data that feeds into Linkit, and that's what makes it such a powerful tool. So that's what we say data warehouse. So what data does it house? Like Ms. Cummings said, you see attendance, you see DIBELS, you see their grades, their Linkit, which could be other assessments on Linkit, the Linkit benchmarks, which Ms. Cummings highlighted, NJSLA scores, and reading levels. Now, I'm going to show you how that kind of expands out, because there's a lot of data on here. You have a student in 6th grade, you have all their DIBELS scores, all their grades, all their Linkit benchmarks, going back to 2nd grade. So it's a lot of data. And ultimately what this does is allows us to kind of see trends, look at different lenses of areas that need to be grown, and see strengths. So I kind of filmed this quickly, so I'm sorry if it's going pretty fast, but this is what a student level looks like. So we can review attendance reports to determine whether a student is chronically absent, which is very helpful. We can also review grade level assessment data, like you might have seen before. The 6th grade does a Big Ideas mid-year assessment on Linkit to evaluate how a student is doing in their math curriculum at that point in the year. In addition, as you saw scrolling through there a little bit, I'll replay the video real quick. You might have seen that there's multiple years of data. So this allows us to see a comprehensive view of a student's history. Longitudinal perspectives are very important. An example is a student who might be experiencing academic challenges. It might be considered for intervention support. So we look at history, right? We want to see if there's trends emerging in a certain area, whether it's math or reading. So let's say a teacher comes to us and says, you know, Mr. Werner, a student really didn't do well on Linkit Form B, and I look at the historical view of the student and say, oh no, the past few administrations, they've done really well. Let's look at maybe some more data to see whether it's just this one administration. Sometimes students, and just like adults, they have a poor test day. So we look at additional data points to see whether it's a trend or not. And when we look at data, we also can go into the data. This is kind of an overview perspective. We can go into it and see actually how the student did. So when we run class reports, and what you're looking at is a class report. This is particularly from Form B Mathematics. This is a mid-year math report that a teacher would look at. We're looking for, if you see the green, right, those are the areas that we're excelling in. You can also click on each of them and see, well, what area, in that yellow area, for instance, right, that green area, we have a lot of students did really well. We have one student in red, 2 in orange, right? So that one area, which was numbers in base 10, that student might need more support in that area, right? And you can look at multiple categories. You saw just before an overview perspective of how they did on each domain, right? You can look at skills and standards. You can look at question type. So the last screen here, you're looking at how they did on multiple choice versus drop downs versus text entry. So maybe as a class, if you look at that, wow, they struggle more with fill in the blank text entry questions than they do with multiple choice and inline choice, which is drop down questions. Maybe as a teacher, I need to expose them more to those style of questions because they're struggling more with those types of questions. So it really gives us an understanding of how we can shift our instruction in our classroom and also what we can focus on more that they might have not learned yet and they need to maybe be something that might need to be retaught to them, or something that they learned already that we might need to just drill down a little bit more and help that student a little bit more because they didn't get that first time. So that was a class report. We can also run, and this is like, when I show this to a teacher, I'm like, we're going to walk through it because it's a lot of data up there. So this view kind of displays three assessments. It looks like 4 columns, but it's actually it's 4 different assessments. So on the left here, you'll see this is the NJSLA for grade 3. You'll see the reading fall assessment for grade 4. You'll see the Linkit ELA Form B, that's their mid-year for 4th grade ELA. And then you'll see their middle of the year DIBELS. This is a lot of data. So I'm kind of walking you through here how we look at this kind of report. And why do we examine this amount of data? So if this is a current 4th grade student, the first thing we try to look at is their NJSLA scores from the prior year. So we have a lot of kids here who are meeting great expectations last year in 3rd grade. Great. You might see on the column to the next of it that we have a lot of students who do really well with their reading comprehension on the OPS reading assessment. Great. But we look at their Linkit and their DIBELS, we start seeing a little bit of discrepancies here. We see some students who might be bubble students, some students who might be on the cusp of meeting. And if we look at the one on the far right, then we start seeing their DIBELS scores. Now, DIBELS is a good indicator because it can also show us students' decoding and their fluency abilities. So the other assessments don't really assess that area. Decoding, can they actually sound out what the words mean? And accuracy, can they say it accurately and decode it, right? And then fluency, can they read at a good rate of speed, right? The other assessments might not show that data. So my point being is that together, all these assessments, they provide a comprehensive view of a student. This is why we administer multiple assessments, because they don't all show the same thing sometimes. And it's important for us to see any type of areas that we can improve upon with a child. And I know sometimes it's like, well, why do we do 4 different assessments across a year pretty much? That's the reason why, because they all tell a little bit of a different story sometimes about how we can help a student. Sprancata.
Good evening, everybody. Buzzing. So taking all that data, Linkit also offers us a component of Intervention Manager. And so with this, we used to use lots of different spreadsheets, and we now are able to take our data that's in the data warehouse and pull it into our Intervention Manager. So staff can choose data sets to review. They can identify the trends, kind of the same thing that Mr. Werner was talking about, but we do it in the Intervention Manager. And then we can assign weights. So we might say Form A, is worth a little bit less than Form B because it was the newer data from the beginning of the year and there's been some learning that has happened. Intervention Manager, once all the data is pulled in there and we give weights, assign the weights, it will help to create and assign tiers to the students based on the progress towards the mastery of whatever skill we've identified or standard we have identified. So here's an example. So if we pulled 3rd grade data and we decided to use Form A on Linkit, Form B on Linkit, and the middle of the year DIBELS. Once we have that in our Intervention Manager, we would click on this pyramid, and that would take us into the Intervention Manager, which is what you're going to see below here. So when we're looking at let me catch up over here. When we're looking at those data points, we can say, all right, so let's give the weights to it. So in this case, doing the 0.5 or the 20% for Form A, and then 40%, which would enable a 1, or 40% for both of the Dibbles and the Form B. And then we can even drill down within Intervention Manager to say, so within Form A and Form B, let's look at main idea. How are students doing with main idea? And then in Dibbles, let's look at maze. So that's looking all at comprehension with a particular skill. Once all of that data is chosen, then you can build a grouping model by choosing that metric and seeing what our focus is going to be. Step 3 up top here has Intervention Manager creating those tiered for us. So the green is tier 1, the yellow is tier 2, and the red is tier 3. And if you look to the right where the little students are here, with that data that we put in, there would be 94 students who are in tier 1, which is telling us just keep on teaching, the good teaching that's happening within the classroom. Tier 2, there's 18 students. That would be during like that win time, targeting these particular skills within the classroom during win. And then tier 3, it's giving us that 5% or the 5 students in that grade level that would need additional support, maybe prerequisite skills for being able to identify main idea within grade level texts. So in addition, we can use Linkit for intervention and for our INRS process. So this first image here is showing where it's a student profile, and in there you would see all of the documents that were created. So a tier 1 checklist, which I'll talk about in just a minute, or an RFA, which is a request for assistance through INRS, or INRS documents themselves, or intervention plans. It will track all of the meetings and the meeting notes that we have in one spot. The file gallery is any kind of student work samples that we can upload. Teachers can do it when they first start talking to the intervention teachers about a student having some concerns. We can track the progress there with the file gallery and keep that same place as we move forward in our process in INRS. And then there's a communication log where we can note the communication with families, whether it's at the meeting or it's over the phone or in person, just, conversation. The teachers can do that, and it could be multiple teachers. So if we have a student in 4th grade who has, 2 different teachers, pairs of teachers, they're sharing that. Anybody who's assigned to that student has access to this, all of this stuff that we have in Intervention Manager. So if we think about the student checklist, the tier 1 checklist, so here's our tier 1 checklist right here. This is something that if there's a student, if I'm a teacher and I'm trying some things in the classroom, let's just say for building fluency, and I'm kind of hitting a wall, I'm not sure what else to do. The teacher would reach out to the intervention teacher and they would create a tier 1 checklist. First off, they'd look at what is the child able to do well? What are the strengths? What are the areas of concern? And then what are some strategies that have happened already in the classroom? So this bottom picture here, this image here, is showing it's a bank of strategies that can be taken place in the classroom and then the outcomes. So how frequently are we doing this? What are the outcomes that we're seeing? And then there's a note section underneath, because sometimes we might be doing something that the Linkit doesn't have. However, if we have something, we can certainly contact our rep, and they're great to add. We can customize our bank of strategies as needed. So after the intervention teacher and the teacher do that tier 1 checklist, check in on their strategies, do it for 3 to 4 weeks, they have another meeting, which again would be noted in that same section that has all of our meetings. So that, again, if I was looking at it and knew nothing about what had happened with the child, I can see the progression of the work that had been done. After the second tier 1 checklist meeting, if the child is not making the progress that we want, we may bring them to INRS. And so the first start for that would be to, like I said before, do the request for assistance for a meeting, which is usually done with the APs. And then at the meetings, when we bring the families in, the parent comes in, it's a team of teachers, we create plans. And so this is an example here of a goal that could be created. So for this student, by April 2026, the student will initiate tasks in math 4 out of 5 trials as measured by a teacher tracker. And so this would be our graph. There'd be sections in there where the teacher would put in if it's done on a daily basis or a weekly basis, how the child is doing towards that specific targeted goal, and monitor that for a 6 to 8 week period, and then meet again with the family and the team to see, Did we meet that goal? Is there another goal that we should be taking place? If you look here, this green, when we put in what our target is and we give the number of progress monitoring dates, it gives you a target line. So the green is the target line. So this student, this is a fictitious student, but started at 2. And by the end of the duration of the cycle, we want them to achieve a 4. Sometimes we do see data like this, right? We see this is where they're starting the baseline, they're kind of stagnant, they may jump up and then be stagnant, maybe up and down, and all of those give us some indication of, why. There's a comment section next to each of the data point that we can kind of say, maybe the next day the child went home sick. And so let's look at the data around there, what's happening there. It gives us a picture, not just the snapshot of that day, but sort of over that period of time, how that child is doing. So these are all things that Linkit, in addition to just being a place where we can store our data, we can actually pull that data from one spot to the other, and we can use that data to get a clear picture of how all of our children are doing. Linkit is very responsive to our needs. Our rep right now, if we have a question, we can reach out, and the next day I would get a video of how to do something if we weren't sure how to do a retest because a student was absent. He himself creates that video for us to watch, and it's been very, very helpful. And we do continue to find ways to better our usage of the resource, which is how we brought Intervention Manager kind of onto the work that we're doing. So, thank you.
For those of you who have been around for a while, Linkit has really grown, and they are, listen, they want to stay alive because more products are coming out like Linkit. There's another one, their biggest competitor right now is Otis. So it's part of why they're very responsive, because they want to keep districts like Oradell that have been with them for a really long time. They also are continuing to go out to other things. Remember when we used Panorama to assess student learning data, like social emotional learning data? Linkit actually now is doing that as well. They now also are doing more with professional development, anything to stay ahead. But they really have grown, and it's funny, they started as predictability software. These big tests came down, PARCC came down as the first Common Core assessment, and Linkit sold itself on, this is a really high stakes test and we're gonna help you predict. The truth is, of all of their products right now, that benchmark assessment is probably the least one that's of value to us. It's really the data warehouse and the intervention manager. So with that, do you have any questions about tonight's presentation?
Suppose, yes, question, and every school does this differently. So 5th and 6th grade, do they offer a literacy support or math support for maybe tier 3 interventions?
Yes, during the WIN period.
Oh, during the WIN period,
Yes.
okay. So my question is this. At the end of the school year, we've got the Form C completed. They've completed the NJSLA. So then the NJSLA scores come in probably, end of July. September 1st, when we get that information and we see that, Chris Nutlin is below bubble in math, all right? Are we going to put him and set him up for WIN September 1st for math support?
We typically run first thing in the year a boost program. So, and the boost program does, I'm looking at them to make sure I'm still accurate because, yeah.
Okay.
But we call it kind of like, instead of like a summer boost, we call it like a get into the school year boost. So we're not looking at all our data points at that time. We're like, these are some kids maybe we've known they've had some struggles in the past, but we want to give them something right off the bat before we've even collected our September data.
So there's going to be no RFA at that point?
No.
Okay.
The
It's when if they
administration-
continue to struggle as the classroom teachers are seeing, then they're going to fill out the RFA.
The other piece is that NJSLA scores actually come in earlier. We just aren't allowed to share them.
Oh, right.
So there are times that we actually will run a summer program.
Okay.
We use either it's part of our explorations program, or we'll use some title funds and run something during the summer because someone's on our radar. In the past, we've typically done that more in language arts because that's where we've seen the greater need.
And if a kid was going to be in that class, how many days a week would that be?
It depends. Every year we kind of have to run it based on what the child can attend. There are years we've done them remote. You know, we've done book clubs. That was during the ESSER days. We ran like a summer book club where a teacher just met with them 3 days a week to touch base on a book that they were reading, just to keep them reading and asking comprehension questions over the summer. If it's an earlier grade program, we haven't had a ton of success with anything above, I'm going to say 4th grade during explorations, but we have run programs because that data has come in, and we have run a 4-week program during explorations 5 days a week.
Okay,
It's very hard to get older grade kids because they're at camps.
right. Okay, thank you.
I have some questions. So this is in regards to data and, you know, how we store our data. I know I've asked this before. I don't remember. So it seems like, you know, as the years go by, we're sharing, well, yeah, we're sharing more and more data, different types of data with Linkit. So in terms of where that data is being stored, can you answer, is that all cloud-based, or is it a combination of local and cloud, or how's that?
Nothing is local.
It's not local?
Nothing's local.
Okay. And then
But I will say that when we share that data, there is, while it's pulling the attendance from real time, it is not pulling anything else identifiable. It's not pulling like, you know,
so it's like
address,
student
name.
ID, yeah. Not the person and the name and all that.
Well, it is pulling their name.
Is
It's
it?
pulling their name, but it's not like, I think it's just the name. I don't think birth date's in there. Gender is in there, grade level is in there. Yeah, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't actually even, that's true. Even when you're a student in the district, you have 2 ID numbers. One is your state ID number, your student identification, okay? The other one is your local. I'm pretty sure it's the local that is kept in Linkit, not the big one that travels with you for years.
Okay. And then, does the parents have access to this?
That's what I shared before, that I
portal.
spoke with Linkit this morning, and as always, they were incredibly responsive and have already started the process to open the parent portal. I have always been hesitant to open the parent portal. And the team knows that I said that if we were to open it, it would have to be mid-year. Because to open it in September, when you've just given Linkit A, and
Yeah.
people aren't doing well, it's going to cause such stress. So I had a very productive conversation today with the person that I was speaking with, and they've already started the process.
And then my last question, is Linkit talking about utilizing an AI tool or AI model to? Yes, Navi is the name of the AI. They call it Navi? And it, and it's going to tell you ahead of time, like proactive notification? Okay, so that's kind of cool. Yeah. So,
I attended a webinar. It seems to be very interesting, but it would be, as far as for Navi, it's going to be for assessment purposes, for us to be able to create our district assessments, if we so choose to actually want to embark on purchasing that as an app.
what do you mean by district assessments? You mean selecting of the questions that we give the students?
Yes, so
Yeah.
say, for example, if we wanted to create a district assessment based off of fractions,
Uh-huh.
or based off of main idea, we can actually ask Navi to create a 5-question, 3rd grade assessment on, let's just say, main idea.
Uh-huh.
And on a 3rd grade readability.
Or would Navi say, hey, you guys, you need to create an assessment on the following based on what I've seen?
You could say that for certain students based off of like their Lincoln.
No, this is the opposite way. This is Jeeves telling you. I don't know if you've noticed, but, you know, there's one area that you guys need to focus on, and here is an assessment for you just to validate what I'm seeing. I mean, you know, AI can do that, so I'm just curious, that's all. I mean, I remember when we first were looking at Linked when we were down at school board workshop, and it was, you know, a lifetime ago. So, I mean, when we were first looking to evaluate this, the CEO of the company came and presented it to us in the library. So, I mean, that's how. We were first. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's nice to see it evolving. And I'm sure it's helping out, so, thanks.
Mrs. Genchi?
Will we get or the parents, will they get a presentation on how to access and interpret this information before this goes live?
Yeah, I've been thinking about whether I would do that with a parent academy, but I think if I did it with a parent academy, everyone would have to bring their own laptop. So I think what we would probably do is do the video like we did for the benchmarking of the report cards, launch that, then send the directions home for how to access, and then possibly, if we see the need, do a drop at night.
Thank you.
Mr. Del Greco?
I have a couple questions, piggybacking off of Mr. Darian's questions. So, you mentioned AI modeling, right? Is our data, I guess, segmented to just us and including the model? So let's say they use AI and you start to say, like you said, your example, create this test, whatever. Is that data, is that model just to Oradell Public School? Or is that putting in a larger model where they can start to use data across other districts?
I can't answer that for certain. What I attended was just like, hey, this is NAVI and this is what NAVI can really do.
Yeah.
But they didn't get into all of the level of specificity that you're giving, that you're asking right now. But what I can do is I can get the answer to that question and circle back to you.
Thank you, because I'm more concerned about with, data, right, especially data ownership. Absolutely. They have now this pile of data across all these districts, right? What stops them, unless it's in our end user EULA, right, that states that our data is ours, right? They can't use it for their marketing purposes, for analysis across other districts, to then give it to the state. I just want to make sure, like, we own our data, it's our data, right, and there's data residency for us. Thank you. And then my other question is that in terms of data, now there are a lot of competitors out there, and I'm in the tech world, right? So is this data exportable to the point where if we needed to take the data away from them, like, I want a copy of it, A, for either our own analysis, right, to say maybe we want to run your own model here, or B, we want to just take it and import it to another platform somewhere else?
Well,
is it exportable?
Well, the fact is, we've imported it. With the exception of the Linkit benchmark, we've imported it in. So we could always, we have so eCam or Dibbles. When we put Dibbles in there, it's because we've imported a CSV file in. So we still have that data elsewhere. The only thing that I don't think there is a way to export, but again, I don't think, if we were going to leave Linkit, we would probably choose a different benchmark assessment. So there are some districts that still use Linkit for a data warehouse, but don't use the benchmark assessments. Use maybe iReady and import it in. So attendance, it links to real time, but we always have access to our attendance. So that actually, the bigger lift would be the amount of data and us getting it into a new system, not could we, just how long in the process it would take.
Yeah, because I see a lot of SaaS providers, like, getting in the platform is really easy. They want you consuming as much as possible. It's always, and I hate to put in this word, like the divorce clause, like, how do you get it out, right? Some of them will rate limit you, some of them will say no, someone will say, well, it's our data legally, you have to give it to us, but we're going to make it very difficult.
Yeah. Because the data really is starting with us, that isn't concerning me. I am curious about the one alternate that I've heard of, and actually one of our former assistant principals works in a district that's using it. So I've sent another former assistant principal to speak to her because she wanted to talk about the two systems. I may just, out of curiosity, look at it, just because I always like to see what else is out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else to your report?
No, thank you.
Mr. Iapelli?
It's just budget time and working on the budget for the 26-27 school year, trying to refine it for the board. That's been my day. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to minutes, we have the review of January 21st. Any questions or comments, please email Mr. Iapelli. And we have approval of January 7th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve meetings minutes from January 7th?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Del Greco. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, administrative, Mr. Darian.
Sure, we have, I'll get to it. One administrative item, it's a HIB report for January 2026 I'd like to introduce.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Nutlin. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes. Prior to this meeting, Mr. Iapelli did provide us some information on the PSE&G incentive program right, to replace potentially 3 HVAC units. Thank you for getting this information to us, Mr. Iapelli. Just we went over, the cost, how much PSE&G would provide to us, 0%, right, and just the implications of such. We still have to review, right, I think from land specs and whatnot. Outside of that, I'd like to bring up B1 and B2. No, just B1, one large B1.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Is the blue and gold dinner the fish and chip dinner? I'm just wondering, did the Boy Scouts finally get rid of the fish and chip dinner?
No, the fish and chip dinner is still happening, and they actually recently called to confirm it. This is the one that used to take place at a hall. It's the first time it's ever been here. It's actually happening now, isn't it?
They should have had it today.
Is it
I have a question.
Mr. Darian?
Building facility use, item 7, 7:30 PM to be determined. Is there a limit, in
Which
terms
number-
of time?
Which number are you on?
That's the
7.
borough's use of the
Yeah.
building. I think that would be up to you as a board to decide.
Okay,
They only gave me a start time.
yeah,
And so for the purpose of charging them for the technical services, I didn't want to document an end time without knowing it.
yeah. Okay,
Want to
just
make it
wondering.
an hour?
Well, if I was a betting man, it would probably end by 10:30. But, these meetings could easily go past midnight. So I didn't know if that would be an issue with the school.
As long as the board is willing to, and if you need us to reach out to the town, the boilers are on. We do need to have somebody with a black seal in the building, so we would have to charge them overtime custodian rate.
We should note
Which-
that.
Yeah, we should note that.
In the event that it goes over
Okay.
a certain time,
Sure.
that we'd have to charge, because it may easily go over. It depends on, how many people want to speak at these meetings. And I don't want to be in a position where we would have to cut anyone short because of constraints.
So we're going to approve it with $50 per hour for technical services and also custodial time.
Yeah, at whatever time we determine.
Yeah.
If
Any
that's
other-
okay with Rami, too. He needs to be here.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, curriculum, Mrs. Norian.
We have no report, but I'd like to present C1, approval of field trips.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Genchi. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes?
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes, Finance, Mr. Darian.
Yes, tonight I have some items to introduce, but before, I just wanted to give an update as to our last B&G meeting. We had a meeting actually tonight, but we also had a meeting just before our last meeting, and the notes are included in your packet. Just a summary for the public or anyone watching on YouTube. We discussed New Jersey Department of Education, what they call approved adjustments to our budget. These are items that we could legally allow us to pass along to taxpayers that is in excess of our normal 2% budget cap. Mostly, pertaining to health insurance and things like that. These are extraordinary expenses that we're able to pass along. So we discussed them and what their potential impacts would be. We also reviewed enrollment projections. We're very sensitive to that in terms of class sizes, and we worry about each year's kindergarten enrollment. We talked about the financial implications and the requirements of bringing on a Class 3 officer into the building. We have some lengthy discussions on what would be required in order for that to happen financially. We did a quick walkthrough of the line items in the budget. We have a budget spreadsheet that we looked through, and we were comparing our current year, which is 26-27 budget, versus last year, the 26 budget, as well as the proposed budget 26-27 versus 25, looking back 2 years. And we were comparing, variances per line item. And that led to a lengthy discussion this time around. And then we reviewed the budgeting calendar, and we even discussed that tonight. So that was basically what we did at our last budget meeting. This is budget season, so we had another budget meeting tonight, and I'll give a walkthrough of that at our next meeting. So with all that said, I'd like to introduce on the agenda tonight items D1 through D11, with a special note on D11 because this is a bunch of mini grants from the Oradell PTA to OPS, totaling almost $23,000. So I'd like to thank them for all their continued support for the children of Oradell.
I'll second it.
Any questions? I have a question for Mr. Iapelli. D8, where we approve the annual comprehensive financial report and the findings. I thought in the past we had to put in the action to correct it, like the corrective action, as opposed to the
I was adding it
recommendation.
at the next, no, this is what we accept the audit, and then I'm going to have the corrective action. on the
Oh, you
next
do it
meeting.
on the separate one?
Yeah, I'll do it on a separate one.
Okay. Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco,
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, delegate report, Mrs. Norian.
No report.
Personnel, Mr. Darian, you want to take that?
Yes, I'd like to introduce item F1, which is our personnel report.
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Norian. Any questions? I know Mrs. Walker reached out to you about why they called facilitator and not teacher. She said to change it, but I don't know if that makes a difference.
She actually, her thing said to keep it as facilitator.
I thought she said teacher facilitator. Does it matter? Is there a reason we're calling it a facilitator?
Honestly, it was copied from a previous title post where they were more of a facilitator role, but I have no problem amending it to say teacher facilitator.
So I know there's, a few people have mentioned it about having it before school. If no one signs up, what do we do? Do we offer it after school? Like, what happens?
I would probably not have the staff to offer it after school.
So this was a staff decision.
It was a dual decision. First of all, every time you run a title program, you're supposed to ask for parent feedback. When we did this in about maybe 2022, parents asked for it before school because they had after-school events. That was when we were running it was specifically a first, second grade reading program before the school day. So that's why we've been running them before school also, because that has been very well received.
Well, we are running some after school.
Correct. And sometimes it is also a teacher situation. Many of our teachers have private tutoring jobs and families they have to get home to, and we can advertise externally, but
So what happens if nobody signs up? Do we just
right now,
scrap the
we already,
program?
well, we already have people signed up, so I'm
Well,
not
what would
worried
happen
about
if
that.
nobody signs up? We scrap it?
Well, I actually wouldn't scrap it. I would go to the next tier of students and see if their families were interested in it.
Any other questions? Mr. Del Greco?
2 questions. A, what's a sportsmanship coordinator and intramural facilitator?
So hoops is a lot of students, and so we were looking for a way to use another facilitator, and each year we do get title funds, and one of those is Title IV, and Title IV can go through to social emotional learning. So it was a way for us to use the Title IV grants and put another staff member at hoops. So one of them will really run the games, and the other one will be ensuring that if you've been part of hoops before, we put the captains in that role, but helping to coach the captains into supporting each other. Are you making sure everybody has a turn?
Awesome.
How are we doing that?
Yes. Then also just a comment, thank you for, putting a nurse at hoops as well.
We have had a nurse there,
I'm
yeah,
just
for a
saying,
long time.
now more than
yeah.
ever, in the news, right? I think it's wonderful
Oh.
that we do that.
Yeah.
So thank you. And then my last question is, this dyslexia conference. So at
Yes.
that conference, are they looking at alternative ways to identify dyslexia? Like, or is it-
I'm going to say, isn't it through Wilson?
yeah,
Wilson's pretty old school traditional, so
Okay.
I'm not necessarily sure. The reason I supported the sending of that staff member is your LDTC is actually really your dyslexia coordinator also for the school, so building up her knowledge in that I thought was important.
okay, so that's good. So building knowledge in that, and then hopefully like trends or different ways to help identify it, or as a district, we can look at ways to help those students.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Just to let you know, the second position in hoops is not a contractual position, so there's money for Title I that may not be there next year, because there's only one stipend in the contract. So it could go back to being single next year, how it was for the last, I don't know how many years, I guess.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutland.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, policy, Mr. Nutland?
Yes, hi. We had a policy meeting February 4th, and some of the things that we talked about are being supported by New Jersey school boards. So we discussed the commencement duties of the president in their absence. We discussed removing language from committee dissolvement, and that's going to be per NJSBA. We revised the fees and the categories for the rental space of the school. Per NJSBA, we changed employment policies to be in line with the legal updates that they have put forth. We've also set up some more clarity when it comes to challenging or concerning materials in the library. We've worked on updating maps on who sits to review a challenge. We've revised the sample pertaining to AI policy. We're taking some more time before we put forth something, a little more permanent, but it will make the first reading to make sure that it fits with the district tech goals, because they have to line up. And then we have a gender issue in terms of waiting for some court cases to come through before we put forth any kind of policies. NG Smart had some minor changes in their data collection. So with that report, I present G1.
And we do not need to vote on it this evening, but we will vote on next time. Any questions are on the website, and you have copies, so any questions, email Mr. Nutland, myself, and Ms. Bozios. Any questions on these tonight, or no? That we know of? No. Public relations, Mrs. Moran is not here. I will give the update. One of the things we talked about was doing another culture and climate survey. And it was suggested maybe instead of doing one really long one, maybe 3 separate smaller ones to get maybe higher engagement, easier for the parents to take care of. We reviewed a document which shows, it was tonight actually in District Goal 2, that shows who's going to be notified, or how parents will be notified for different things. If you saw it tonight, district calendar, whatnot. And then we were also discussing, sort of discussion on who should be notified on certain events, when we were talking about yellow or red events, whether it's the whole district, a whole grade, just a specific class, just the parents of the students involved. There does seem to be an attitude sometimes in Oradell Public that everybody has to know everything, and we're going to try to cut that down a little bit. Like, if your child isn't involved, you do not need to know. But there are certain things the whole school needs to know, there are certain things the whole grade needs to know, there are certain things the whole class needs to know, so we're trying to kind of pin certain those down. And I guess we'll be working on that the rest of the year. And with that, moving to special education, Mrs. Downey's not here. We had a meeting scheduled this past Monday, had to be rescheduled. Was this past Monday, right? We're hoping to meet next week. We have some dates, so we'll see what happens to that, with that. So at this point, open to the public. Any old or new business? Mr. Darian?
I want to bring something up to the board, just to get your opinions, and it doesn't have to be your opinions tonight, but, recent news, I don't know the best way to tee this up. I'll just come right out and say it. I'm interested in modifying the curriculum a little bit that would modernize or discuss modern exploitation and in order for prevention. And what am I talking about? In recent developments with Jeffrey Epstein's network, it continues to reveal patterns of sexual exploitation involving invitations to private luxury properties, travel, and introductions to wealthy social circles. This type of trafficking and exploitation extends beyond the stereotypical scenarios that we normally associate with, like a stranger cruising around in a white van. So modern practices involve grooming, emotional manipulation, social media, travel, fame, money, career enhancement, social status improvement, and personal influence to gain access to victims. I mean, I can remember people approaching me in a mall saying, my kids look great, would I be interested in, photo shoots and stuff like that. Come to find out that it's a scam for sex trafficking. So, things that I don't know if we cover in our health/sex ed, but, topics that we may want to include would be grooming and manipulation awareness. Power and influence doesn't equal safety. Invitations and travel safety. I know we discuss online behavior and recruitment, but, there's a twist to this that we could, focus on. Refusal skills and consent. I don't know how much we spend on that. Practical scripts for saying no to assertive behavior. Reporting and safety networks. So these are just a couple of things. Why should we do this? It moves past the outdated idea of risk from unknown adults in vehicles. It reflects real-world situations involving invitations, travel, social media, backstage access, and grooming. It prepares students for complex, real exploitation dynamics seen in recent investigations, and encourages critical thinking about adult influence, incentives, secrecy, and boundary violations. So, I mean, this really sucks that we got to talk about this. But if you pay attention to the news, and especially with the 3 million emails that have been released, the extent of this is global, and it's from people you would never expect. So, and I'm not going to name names, but, you know, we all know these individuals are very prominent, very wealthy, and it feels that more power, more wealth, more influence, the more you're prone to do stuff like this. So I think it would be something to think about, and how we could improve our curriculum, you know, to protect our kids from this type of exploitation.
I think we have some of it's in there already, right? Maybe not to this degree, but we should look at it. Maybe we can compare your list to what we already have and maybe take a look at, what do you think in curriculum?
You can put it on the curriculum agenda, but as I shared with Mr. Darian, this is addressed as far back as in second grade in the library, where we talk about grooming that occurs through Roblox, which that's when children start to play it. It continues in third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade during the STEAM lab in the beginning of the year, and it is a whole lesson in our sixth grade curriculum, where we also are bringing in the prosecutor's office this year to speak to our sixth graders. However, I do think we can do a better job informing our parent community, because I think sometimes we're living in a Pollyanna world where we think our kids are really innocent, and this isn't going to happen yet. We have had instances in the past where things have occurred digitally with strangers in the world. Which is why we are really trying to build up the prosecutors' parent talk, because our parents, he doesn't want this video, unfortunately, so we can't stream. So any ideas that we have to get more parents at that, or put more information in their hands, so this just isn't happening in isolation here a couple times a year, because this is an ongoing conversation every time your child puts on a gaming headset. And the fact is, many parents are not paying attention to the age restrictions on digital tools. Whether it be Instagram, whether it be Roblox, no one should be messaging in Roblox underneath a certain age. It is right on their website. And parents are giving them permission to do it, because you need the parent permission to do it. When you're gaming with someone online, these are the areas where things are starting. I have no problem, though, putting this on our next curriculum meeting so that we can document better what we are already doing, because it is happening in 3 different places. It's really not just in comprehensive health and physical education. It's in the library, because we talk about some digital stuff in the library, and it's also every year in the STEAM lab.
So you can bring it to curriculum and break it down by grade. Mr. Del Greco, you want to say something?
Yeah, just a second on that, right? I mean, when you talk about grooming, right, a lot of it does happen on those gaming platforms, right? But even something as simple as kids posting up their own, YouTube channel, right? And then people commenting on it. That's the number one place where grooming starts. Even end user agreements, right? I have 2 kids. They asked me, can I have Snapchat? I said, first thing I ask, I'm like, read the agreement. Oh, you have to be 13. I can guarantee you there are a lot of people under the age of 13 that use that platform. But what people don't realize is that what they're doing with the data, and then even now with advent of AI, it's very easy for somebody to say, provide me a persona of a 14-year-old boy from River Edge, New Jersey, that, when is the schedule for the football game and blah, blah, blah. And then they start to just interact with people. They look at location tracking on Snapchat. They're like, oh, this group of people is at the mall. The threats have gotten way more complex, but also way simpler to execute because of now AI and all the location tracking and all the, I would say, tools at the disposal of people. So I would hope that as the prosecutor's office is going to do, I believe, a good job, right? But they also do a job of scaring people to say, this is the scary world that's out there. I would like an approach where it's more of an educative approach to be like, look, do you realize what you're consenting to, right, when you say yes to Snapchat? Do you realize what you're consenting to when There's an app called Lock It on the phone where you can share photos. Do you realize what the implications are of that when you say yes? Like, who owns the photo? Who gets to see the photo? Why? Right? And then the extortion schemes too, right? There's a very targeted extortion schemes going out, between, first it was males, now it's females, about taking AI-generated photos, right? There's a Law and Order SVU episode about this, and I think that's a very valuable lesson in just taking random photos of yourself and just putting them either to a friend online or somewhere. So now photos of just even you clothed aren't safe anymore. And I think that we do a good job of the general, basic education of it. But these things have gotten so sophisticated and so, I would say, easy to accomplish very quickly that I think we need to constantly evolve, right, the curriculum conversation.
One thing I'd like to bring up is, with Jeffrey Epstein and his little place down in Miami, Ghislaine Maxwell didn't find girls in the local school to traffic at his house. They found other little girls who wanted to make $100 or $200, and they would go out and traffic their friends for money, and their friends would come for money. And it's that manipulation that I think we should focus on, because, we all know about the dangers of online people, and you don't know, and people are posing as others, and they have anonymous whatever, and you're not supposed to meet someone, obviously in the middle of the night on a date that you never met. But we're talking about someone's parent invites you to the Bahamas, for an all-expense vacation for Easter, and you're like, yeah, me and 6 other girls are going to go. Well, what's the motivation behind that? I think we should be teaching our kids that, this could be, exploitation event, So if your parents aren't there, you should be questioning it. So, and this stuff happens. People look at me like, yeah, you're just, you're exaggerating, but it's not. From what I understand, it's commonplace. So, and that's the hard part, the talent agency that's legit, 10%, 15%, is they're focusing on sex trafficking. The people traveling abroad to, work a job, turns out it's a sex trafficking operation. So what do you do? And I'm not saying that we should be focusing all of that, for our kids, but we should be laying the groundwork to let them know that, I hate to be it, like, I'm a New Yorker. I think, if anyone's nice to me, I would automatically get suspicious, right? I don't think we should be treating our kids like that, but at the same time, we need to open their eyes to say, this doesn't seem right, It's kind of like, during MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, if you get into a car with somebody who had 1 or 2 drinks, you'd have to think to yourself, is this a wise decision? When I grew up, that wasn't a big deal. 1 or 2 drinks, you'd jump in a car and wouldn't think about it. So it's that, increasing the importance of stuff that in the past no one really thought about. And, I don't have an answer for you. I'm just saying that this is something we should pursue in terms of expanding our curriculum, so that even the CEO down the street could be just as bad as the convicted pedophile who just got out of prison.
Perhaps the prosecutor's office, maybe we reach out to them and say, listen, can you expand upon your presentation to our students to maybe include, the phishing that goes on for our children? And you're right, this is a way more pervasive issue than people want to understand. And it does start with our parents being more diligent with their children's online footprint. And it's quite remarkable how large our kids, how their footprint is on the internet, especially the ones who have unfettered access to it. And it's quite scary.
Just to kind of expand on what Mr. Del Greco was saying, and Ms. Bozios, you were referring to doing like a parent education part of it. While I think it's super important to include this in our curriculum and make sure our kids are hearing about this in different, like in school additionally. This is such an important at-home conversation on top of it being in school. And I think that a lot of parents don't necessarily know how to speak to their children about this in a way that's age appropriate without actually scaring them, or while simultaneously being able to drive home the importance of this. Because yes, it's internet-based, but it's also community-based. It's going to a friend's house where there might be other older kids there that, will have a sibling, something like that. And I think if we could do some sort of parent education where we know how to speak to our children appropriately, especially if it's not a conversation you've been having with your kids from a young age. We have a book series at home that's like the ABCs of consent and other body safety books. So my kids have kind of always come up knowing that, but not everybody has had access to that type of material to teach their kids from a young age. And that introduction conversation is really challenging to have when you have young kids. So if we could, provide resources to parents to be able to better have conversations that are effective with their kids, I think that could be really useful also.
Any other old or new business before we go to closed session?
Yeah, I have. Just wanted to thank the DPW, right, during the last snowstorm. I believe, if I have this correct, they reached out to Ms. Bozius, like, how can we help? I think that removing the snow and the mounds of snow around the building has provided a safer or a safe environment for the kids to get out of the car, versus if there were the mounds of snow there, they'd have to get out of the car, walk in the street, walk over the snow, which would, I would say, provide a little more of a dangerous environment. So thank you. There is more snow potentially in the forecast, so I'm hoping that that same reciprocation is, it wasn't a one-time, it's, kind of the norm going forward.
In the past, they always came and cleared off of our sidewalks. It was just a thing, like they came, because even one year they dumped it all on Memorial Field, and the spring came and the town was complaining there was so much snow piled up. Like, it was a thing that we didn't have to call, it was just what they do.
We didn't call. It was a timing thing on our part. It was our supervisor's first storm, and perhaps what he should have done first, he didn't do first. So
We should do what first?
We normally do the sidewalks and everything first. We throw it in the road, and then DPW gets a little upset, but takes it all away.
Yeah, because they're
And
supposed to come by and get it for
correct.
us.
We hadn't done our part when they had already come through. So now that we have a different system in place, luckily, Mr. Tajian, as the council member in charge of DPW, reached out and said, how can we help? Right now, I am also going to be talking to them about possibly seeing if we can get that basketball court across the street cleared. We are really in dire need of some outdoor recess, and our grass is not going to be available for a really long time. We were able to clear off our basketball court. I did recently have a parent ask about closing down the streets. I don't think the Oradell Police Department is going to be a big fan of that. So the only other blacktop I can find is the basketball court on Oradell Ave.
Speaking of, police, streets, and traffic management, do we have any sort of date in the near future on the public safety meeting? Because there are some concerns I have of, again, just repeated U-turns on Center Street, non-compliance of people staying in the car versus, they're staying in their car versus moving up. I think the imbalance of students, the number of students, so you have a very large grouping of students on the Church Street side, which is creating traffic havoc in the morning on Prospect, on Oradell Avenue, and I just think we need to look at a better way.
That doesn't come under the district safety committee typically. District safety's always been about, really about lockdowns, things like that.
That's the
However,
street.
Yeah, the street.
That's not us.
We have had other conversations. I remember going downtown for a drop-off, brainstorming all the other ways we could drop off. But if you want to talk a little bit about that, we can reach out to the actual officer in charge of traffic and maybe make that a separate conversation also.
That'd be great, thank you.
Anything else? You want to make a motion to go into closed session?
I make a motion that we go into closed session?
I'll second.
Roll call?
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco,
Yes.
Mrs. Genchi,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, no action will be taken after.